All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Yay for Business podcast. This is a really exciting episode because we are doing our very first interview. I think this is going to be, I don't know at the time of recording, I think it's going to be episode 16, but I was really nervous to get into interviews because it requires more organization and it requires me listening more and not talking so much. And to be really honest, that's often really challenging for me. And so I could not resist having our guest on today. Because it was such an organic thing. This is a topic I am so personally passionate about. And this expertise is so fresh and new. I just was so excited, and I follow my enthusiasm everywhere I go. So I am so excited today for you to listen to this conversation with our guest, Chido Samantha Barbaria. Chido is a marketing and business consultant who operates an online business and is certified in digital wellness, which is a brand new thing. Like many of us who found ourselves alone together during the pandemic, she became overwhelmed regularly by digital distress caused by technology's overuse. Who cannot resonate with that? She was fortunate enough to discover the Digital Wellness Institute and is one of the first graduates of the Institute's 2020 Digital Wellness Certificate program. This is what I was so excited about. If you guys watched the movie The Social Dilemma, they talk about this, and this is how we kind of connected over this topic. So during this 10-week program led by a team of health and wellness experts, Chido learned how to digitally flourish and start the knowledge embodiment and empowerment process of digital flourishing. I love this concept so much. Her mission is to create a digital wellness community that helps others who work online and remotely to learn how to decrease screen time. Check. Have more human time. Double check. Your life is what you pay attention to. Oh, that's so good. And it's critical for us to develop the mindset and best practices when engaged with technology, as such that rather than threatening our well-being, time spent on our devices augments it. Oh my God, what a powerful mission you have. We need this so bad right now, right?
Totally.
I'm so excited to have you. Yes, 2020, as hard as it was, right? It gave us that awareness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. If 2020 was the year that we were all hooked on our phones, hooked on connecting, I'm hoping that 2021 and beyond, we're going to be thinking about how we want to do this mindfully and well. Yes. Because just like how we take care of our bodies, our nutrition, tech is the new health and wellness area we need to leverage in our lives.
I love that. I love thinking about it as a separate, you have your mental health, your physical health. And obviously all these things interrelate, but it's another sort of domain of our health that we need to treat with just as much respect. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel 2020 just came at us out of left field, right? And we had to react to it, but now we know it's happening. So maybe going into 2021, we can do this with a little bit more intention. But what I want to do is I want to back up because, 2020 was crazy. We're into the next sort of decade here, well into it. And I want to think back on the past 10 years because I feel and I don't know, I want you to lend your expertise here because I have sort of my own observations, but I'm, an armchair expert at this stuff. You have the certification, right? It feels like from 2010 to 2020, our digital lives exploded. And I remember back around, I didn't even have a smartphone in 2010. I was living in Paris and I was still using T9 to text people and physical maps to get around the city. So I would love for you to talk to us a little bit about what has happened over the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And just like you, I lived in Belgium, so I know the GSM culture and what we've seen happen in the information age, we've transcended right into the attention economy. When I remember the time there was no Instagram, no Facebook. When I was in Europe, in Belgium on a youth exchange, there was none of that. I don't have images of that time in my life. But once we got all these great things that connect us, what happened is that our attention our eyeballs are the prize. We are being fought over for our eyeballs, and attention is the most scarce resource that we can give to a person IRL and online. So we're seeing that friction happen where we have an attention economy, but we're getting a distracted society because of it.
Amen. Right? Like, and I'll mention this a bunch of times, but as somebody who was recently diagnosed with ADHD, like, by definition, that is what's happening in my brain. I have a theory that, maybe it took me so long to get diagnosed because maybe my symptoms just weren't as bad until all of this exploded. And you have this great article that I'm going to share in our show notes that I've devoured, where I know that you mentioned there's more information out there than we have information overload, right? Than we can possibly consume. So we have this very limited amount of attention, but there's constantly just things pinging at us from every direction. I have this smartwatch even now that by default, all these notifications are on, all these screens. We go from our phone to our TV, to our computer, to our car even has a screen now. It feels like it's really hard to get away from. And you mentioned being in Belgium, that took me back because you said I don't have images from that time. We used to use actually separate cameras, right? We used to have these separate devices that kind of forced us to our phones just weren't as useful.
No, they weren't. And what the rise of technology and smartphones, social media has made us have this always on culture thing. And being always on culture means we constantly need to be connected and network, even when we don't need to be. Right? Yeah, we'll look at our phone or our emails, even if we don't need to at 11 o'clock at night. We are now have created this habit of being so deeply connected that it's a second-hand thing we do. We pick up a phone, we look at email, we look at Instagram for no reason.
Exactly. What do you think has created that always on culture? What was the recipe for that? Because I don't think any of us like it, but for some reason it's this snowball that's out of control.
Mm-hmm. Because we have this information overload. There's so much information out there. And there's even a term called the bottomless bowl by Tristan Harris. And he says that the way everything's designed right now is that content never stops. They've actually reduced that friction of content stopping. So an app, remember there's a time on Instagram, you would scroll and be like, there's nothing left.
I saw everything.
Guess what? We can never say that to people. That is a developer mission and vision, is that they can never stop consuming content. So that is the role of the internet, of social media apps, is that we're always coming back. We're always finding the information, but wanting it. We want to consume it. So somebody like you, Courtney, who's got ADHD, who's thinking all these things, those apps are definitely feeding that.
Yeah.
It's this,
yeah.
It's that.
It's hijacking your brain because, right. It's giving you, and I was telling you before we started recording, I was I'm so obsessed with this, not idea, but I'm so obsessed with learning more about dopamine because I just read this great book. I'm going to put the name of it and everything in the show notes. It's called The Molecule of More. And it's all about how dopamine is, I'm just making this connection now. The Instagram never stops. Well, dopamine literally is never satisfied. That's how it operates. And so they always say that's why we get addicted to the technology. And I'm using the word addicted lightly. I'm not using it officially, but you literally are never satisfied with your dopamine. And then there's literally never an end to this. It's like a slot machine, right? Going into Instagram, and they've developed it that way so that it will have that effect on you. And then if you have a sort of brain chemistry, like someone with ADHD that already has a dopamine regulation problem, right? Someone with ADHD, their brain is actually already struggling to constantly be on the hunt for dopamine. Then it creates just this, it feels sometimes like an impossible situation if you don't recognize it and you don't acknowledge that you aren't in control of it. I think that's kind of the key out. Would you agree that you kind of have to acknowledge it is out of control before you can actually set any kind of boundaries or habits?
Oh, 100%. Because what you have to do each time you pick up a phone, use an app, is their job to get you hooked. And Nir El wrote a book called Hooked, and it's really great. And he was actually presented to us as somebody who is an app developer. He coined the word hooked because that's a UX design strategy to say, how do we get people to come back? Our job is that people are always coming back because this app is not successful. That's their KPIs, is how many people coming back. So everything is designed to get us to come back. And it was very telling when I heard someone say that the biggest competition is us sleeping. It's sleep. That's
like when our brains physically can't have attention because oh my God, how horrifying.
Imagine people looking at Instagram late at night at 2 a.m. and it's not another app that's Instagram's competitor. It's sleep, right?
So it's in their interest to get us to not sleep.
It's beneficial for the app to be valued in terms of value, and it's helping, it's working if we stay on the app longer. So knowing that, having that awareness, we can apply that to ourselves at the micro level, right? At the macro level, we know apps are doing that. I think Social Dilemma highlighted the macro level of what's going on. And people may have felt helpless because they're like, oh my goodness, all these things are against us. But it comes back to us making decisions, knowing what we know. What decisions are you going to make about social media and the phone and the internet a little bit differently and how we use them?
I think that's a perfect segue because I think the biggest thing when I was asking my team, when I was asking, other entrepreneurs I know when I knew I was going to interview you, I was like, guys, like this is our chance to get all this information from Chido. I was like, what questions do you have? The biggest thing that came up, whether it was people on my team who are, more intrapreneurs or entrepreneurs was, I have to be on the internet for my work, my school, whatever it is. I can't just be a monk and be like, I'm going to shut down my Facebook. I've seen people do that. And that's great. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I could just move to a farm and not have any internet access, but I'm never going to do that. That's not on the plans for me. Some of us, we do need to use social media, not only because, Instagram is part of what we do for our marketing. But even one of the things that played in my head when I was watching The Social Dilemma was, the business model of advertising is so broken with these big businesses. And then as me, someone who uses Facebook for advertising, it gave me this big question in my head of like, how do I use these tools in a way that is healthful, that helps me to flourish, right? I love that word. Mm-hmm. So that I'm not suffering, but also so that I'm not a part of the problem, right? Like, I don't want to be like, I'm a business owner. I need to use advertising. I don't think there's anything morally wrong with that. But I also want to make sure I'm being ethical and in alignment with my values, and me not being like, I'm never going to use social media, but I'm going to use Facebook advertising and like throw my ads in front of like, I didn't want to be incongruent. So I guess my question inside of this ramble here is, how do we start to use technology, maybe specifically social media, maybe specifically things like Instagram in a healthy way? Like what do we do?
And it's just great because when I learned what I learned, watched Social Dilemma as a digital marketer like yourself, I'm like, I'm the bad guy here, right?
Yeah, I totally don't be felt the bad guy.
Like I'm attributing to this, and I won't lie, that's something I'm still reconciling with my role. And I think it's always our intention. I think when you put an ad as a business owner, we put an ad, we're not getting someone hooked. No one is getting addicted by our ad, right? No one is like, oh my goodness,
that's a quotable. Like we're pulling that out.
I think where people are challenged with the ad is when these big companies are now able to customize the ad for us, knowing we can buy for that. You're selling an ad, you want it to reach your people. So I don't think small business owners should feel bad because you truly believe your product and service is to reach somebody, not to get them hooked, right? We're really trying to get our eyeballs or the people who need our products and service there, but we're not the future saying that we can like walk past a display and it will actually have enough data to transform that display and it will know us so well. It'll say Courtney likes plants and puppies and this, and it's going to show you plants and puppies outside a store. So you go in and that's where you can question, is that manipulation or is that just technology knowing us so well, which is another conversation. But for business owners, we are really trying to serve and help people. I think the essence and intention of our work, that we should remember the joy of why we start our business and why we are turning on this ad. And it's not to get someone hooked. It's not for evil. It's for good.
Yeah. That I think was huge because I think First of all, I really admire your honesty in that you are still reconciling this, because I think for us to pretend like we've all figured it out is A, unhelpful, B, a lie, and C, worrisome, right? Like if I was like, I have all the answers about this, don't trust me, like that would be problematic. But I also feel like it means that you are a person who has ethical, moral standards and values, that like you recognize that this is a complicated issue. And I think if we're all constantly sort of questioning this and in that struggle, I think that's healthy. Like the second that we're just like, no, ads are it's always great or it's always bad, I think that black or white thinking is way more dangerous. I think it's good that people like you and I are sitting in this discomfort, constantly questioning ourselves and our like you said, the intention, and also acknowledging we might not always get it right, but we're always going to be asking those questions. I think that's really important. It's going to be uncomfortable. It is going to be a topic, I think, of our lifetimes, right? Like I don't think these things are going away in either of our lifetimes.
Nope.
Yeah. So that second part then, I guess, is, so let's say for someone listening, they're a online business owner, they're using social media, or they want to use social media to market their business. Yet they're finding themselves, like you said, doom scrolling at 11 p.m., losing sleep, feeling like they have to always be on. What are some things that they can start to do, some practical things to take control back of these platforms, of their lives, of their time, of their attention, I guess I should say?
Absolutely. When I was looking at my program and I was like, okay, for me as a business owner, where am I struggling with tech use? And when I say tech use, I found it in 3 core areas for myself. And I think a lot of online business owner would agree. It's internet, when you're trying to fight internet overload because you're online while you're doing your work. I found it to be in social media, and I found it to be on our phones. We are usually struggling in one of these 3 core areas. And that's where, when I say screen time, it's because of one of those 3 things. And the way that we can start being aware, first of all, if it's on the internet, it's task switching. We multitask. As online business owners, what are we doing? Answering emails, Slack, Instagram post, live, story, right? We are like task switching like crazy.
You get in this cycle where you're like, okay, I checked Instagram. Now I check my email. Now I check Slack. Now I check Instagram. Now I check my email. Now, like, you find yourself after 15 minutes, like, what am I doing? I just keep clicking between those like 3 things.
Right. And then know what that is? That's not really a tech issue. That's an us issue, because we believe multitasking is not real. We need task switching is not helpful, because what happens when we can't transition from one task to another, that's when anxiety pops in. Yes. That's when we feel inadequate. That's when we feel like a failure. And we can say, oh, it's internet, it's social media. It's our ability that we can't focus on one thing. And we try to focus on too many things, and we can't switch as fast as computers. Our brains are not computers, but we expect information as fast as a computer. We expect things as fast as a computer, but we're humans. Our brains are not computers.
Also, computers don't get anxiety, right? Like
that's a quotable moment, right?
Thank you.
Because when we do that and we don't meet our goals or realize I was scrolling, what do? We down ourselves as business owners. We get into comparison when we're on social. Those are the effects of it. But we're just we're human. We can't do what computers can do. We can't.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that goes back to what I said earlier. Like the first step is you have to acknowledge what's happening. And it's like, first step number 1, admit that you have a problem. Like I think, but acknowledging that it's like, you are a human. It's okay that you've been hijacked by all of this for so long. Like, don't beat yourself up about it. Like it will happen in the future as well. Don't be a perfectionist about it. But like, you also, I think there's something you said in there. It's like, you need to take responsibility for your behavior in so much as you can, because when you give your power away to Facebook or Instagram or Google or, whatever it is you're doing on your phone, then you can't do anything about it. Like you're a victim. And while there are problems in these companies, I would rather we focus on the things that we have control over, because that's where we can actually take action. So let's say like Susie over here is a web designer, and she like loves Instagram, and she's constantly on it, and she loves doing stories, and it's fun for her. But then she also has a lot of anxiety. She's not sleeping well. She's not getting things done. Like, what are maybe like 3 practical things that she could do to start to like take that control back?
Absolutely. So when I did the digital one, we talked about digital flourishing. And what that is just the optimal state of health that we can have without technology. So it's totally subjective. It's the optimal way you feel empowered with all this tech. So when you think of who you want to be with your tech, right? You want tech to be something that's a resource, right? I want it to be a resource, not something that, disempowers me. So already saying, this is my expectation with my tech device, is the way I want to live with my tech. So first thing, set an intention. Know your intention and your intention. My intention for being on social media is to connect with my people, connect with my friends, connect with my audience. And where do I put my intention? So my intention for using Instagram is for those things, but where's taking my attention? Is it social comparison? When someone has a great 6-figure launch and they're saying they did great, how is that making me feel? That's a trigger, right? And I'm feeling, I was just came on to put a post. I wasn't here to hear Courtney's, 6-figure launch. And now I'm feeling a kind of way.
Guys.
I did it again, right? So is that a Courtney? Is that Instagram? Was that me and how I feel my attention is being hijacked from what I want to do on social media? So
yeah, I love that. Like, where is it getting hijacked? Like, where is it that you went on Facebook to check your ads performance and then you ended up commenting on some group thread? Like, where was it that it went wrong? That's so key.
Know your triggers. I think, people said social media is bad for mental health. And when I did the program, there's actually no studies that can actually say that. However, if you're somebody who does have mental health dispositions, it will trigger them. It will affect them. So if you're somebody who has depression, you know what? It will trigger depression. If you're somebody with ADHD, you will get lost with that. So already know yourself, know thy own self be true. So knowing that about myself, I get triggered by this, I can make decisions of the role Instagram plays in my life. And even if someone says, I have no mental health issues, well, we still are human. We still have social comparison. And depending on how you use social media, it will affect you as such.
And I have a feeling if they're still listening to this episode that there's something you're not loving about the way you use social media. So like, that's the thing that to maybe focus on. What is it that is frustrating you, or like that you feel like you've lost control over, or like you said, where is it that it's triggering you? Because if you're predisposed to anxiety or depression or whatever it is, it's only going to amplify
100%.
Whatever that thing is.
It's going to amplify it. It's not the place you should be. That's why 3 things like you can do is just know your triggers. And then the second thing, so like, hey, I get triggered when I do this, like a tech overload, I get lost in my tech. Think of a way to create a routine around it. So I know for myself, I don't look at social media in the first thing in the morning and the night, because it sets the tone. I feel a certain kind of way. If something is not great in the news or something, it's already affecting me. So I know my triggers. I've made the routine saying, hey, I don't look at social until like after lunch. I've made that for myself.
I love that. I just want to pause for everyone listening. Just imagine for a second, not looking at social media until after lunch. I just want to everyone to open their mind to that first, because that's powerful. Like, your morning is yours.
It's mine. I dictate how I feel. If I wake up, do my affirmations, I meditate, I am on top of the world. I'm going to own my power, because that post that's going to totally put you somewhere else. And that is so unfortunate, because you probably didn't wake up that way, Yeah. So that's a routine. And then I put a reward, because I love content. I love binging. So I like to binge all my favorite articles on Saturday morning. Saturday morning, I am binging everything I want to binge. Or I love reality TV gossip. There's a certain time I'm going to go in and scroll all the reality TV gossip and get my hit, right? This is amazing, because
what I'm feeling, I'm getting goosebumps right now, because what I love so much is basically you're schedule your binges. There's nothing wrong with don't berate yourself every time you get on Instagram or go to your favorite gossip website or whatever. do that, but do it on Saturdays, like while you drink your coffee. Like that's the time. And make it okay. And that way, when you are wanting to do it, you can kind of say, okay, I'm going to do that on Saturday. Like that's my time.
And I'm done.
And
like I love reading Medium articles. So instead of like, oh, I'm writing an email. Oh gosh, I pinged an article from so-and-so I want to read. I'm like, save it.
Put it in your bucket for
Saturday mornings, 9 and 10 Saturday mornings. I'm in bed with coffee, just binging all the
Adorable.
things.
I love
it. You know, lunchtime is like I'm wanting to go on a genius walk, or I want to look at social media. I want to see what everyone's day is. Like I know when I can receive that information. And some days having phoneless Sunday, I have no social media Sunday. I do not want to be on, I have screenless Sunday, where I try to not be on the screen because I have really dry eyes. I live in Calgary, Alberta, which is super dry.
So dry.
And so I just want to be less of screen because that's a physical thing for me. Like my eyes get really dry. So I'm like, I want a screenless day. So
I literally need glasses now because of being on the screen for so many years. So I like, even if you don't have eye problems, like it will give you eye problems because it strains your eyes to look at such a close distance for so long. So now I'm nearsighted. My eyes and I'm like acting like I'm some kind of eye muscle expert, but from what I understand, like the muscles in my eyes are all tight. So when I go to look far away, it's blurry now because it's all strained from it's 100%. Like pulling a muscle.
We are looking at a computer. So when I go for my walks, I look far away. My eye doctor told me like, you should look at trees, look far away, because we've trained our eyes to look at screens and short distance. So when you do go for a break and walk, actually practice looking at the tree. Our eyes need that exercise.
Nature. And I just want to like, this is like a side thing here. I just want to plug in. Humans like overwhelmingly underestimate how much better we feel after looking at or being in nature. So like, even right now, I'm like turning my head over and I'm looking out and I can see some trees. You don't realize it. And it is literally one of the best things you can do for your mental and physical health is like take literally a 5-minute walk, like even 1 minute step outside, if that's all you've got. Amazing.
And taking those straight, and that's why we say optimize your habits, right? Like take the walks, take the breaks. So I know if I have a 5-minute break, what can I do in 5 minutes? I can stretch on my yoga ball. I can quickly use the washroom, listen to my favorite music. If it's 10 to 20-minute walk, I'll go on my genius walk, which is just walking.
Yeah. I want to hear more about the genius walk. What is this? I love this. I love this name.
It's a term. I worked in a marketing company once and I loved it. And we would have meetings as a walk and would have our apps and we have like Google Keep Notes. And we call them genius walks because we can have kind of like that meeting, but not in a desk, or that brainstorming, but you're walking around. And when I'm trying to solve a big problem, I try not to sit at my desk and solve it. I have what we call a genius walk. And we just like thinking about your business or like trying to find answers somewhere outside of the office. So
I love, because this is what I'm like on this kick right now of like walking locks. I just got this Fitbit Versa 2 that I will not stop talking about. And like, it's ironic. This piece of tech is what helps me to not be on other tech. Like it's been an amazing experiment so far. But even this morning, I just went on like a 30-minute walk, and about halfway on my walk, there was a coffee shop and I got my coffee and I was like, this is the best morning ever. And guess what? I've done it in the rain. Like it doesn't matter. It is wild what just walking can do. And I've read a bunch of other books recently about this. And I think there's something in here, Chido, around like crowding out technology. Like instead of trying to resist going on technology, put things in your day that just crowd it out. Like going on walks and things that at this point, I just forget about my phone. I'm not like actively trying not to be on it. I just have other things I'm doing and I don't think about it.
But you know what, Courtney? That's the problem, because I realized when I was like, okay, I want people off tech. What happens when we're not on tech? I don't think people know what to do if they're not in front of the screen. And this is why it's like we need more human time. We need more people time. Because if we put away our tech, I honestly think as a society, we'll be like, I have nothing to do. So what would you like to be doing? Is it a hobby? Is it serving? And I think us as people need to find out, if we took away tech, what would you be doing with your life?
You do?
And I don't think people have those answers. And I think that's not for tech to decide. Like me as a person, it's like, what would you be doing? I know for me, it's planting. I'm a plant mom. I just got some stuff to learn how to macrame so I can sit and actually be using my hands. I'm like challenging to use my hands again. I was like, I don't use my hands and feel and touch and taste. So I'm going back to the five senses. Like, what can I hear, feel, touch, and taste?
Yes.
That brings me joy. And you mentioned your walk, and that's an example of habit stacking. You said, hey, getting coffee is a habit. You're going to bring joy. I would add maybe saying some affirmations on that walk. Maybe you text somebody close in your life saying, I'm thinking about you. I love you. How can we stack our good habits to actually be all these good things? I mean, it's just not a walk. Maybe you're just doing gratitude, that walk to get coffee.
Yeah. And then it starts to like, so with habit stacking, if I like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea is that you already have this habit established, just attach another habit onto it. And that way one habit triggers the other habit versus trying to start like a fresh new thing that is like, this is what people do. They're like, right now I'm sleeping in until 11:30. I'm drinking too much. I'm drinking too much coffee. I'm not exercising. So what I'm going to do is start waking up at 5 a.m., running 3 miles. It's like, no, it's too much.
And one thing I do is like, I love watching reality TV with my roommate, but I will do it on a yoga ball. So I do my yoga stretches there. So she'd be on the couch and I'll be like stretching on a yoga ball, or you could be on your Peloton bike when you're watching your thing. So that's like, hey, I'm doing a habit, like I'm binge watching reality TV, but I'm on a bike, I'm stretching. So that's not like a kind of like a bad habit, but you're making it good because you're doing something like moving your body.
Yeah, I do that too. I have this like new little like massager thing, so I use it while I watch TV because I'm like, well, then at least I'm like not just atrophying into the couch.
Exactly. So we got to think about the new ways we can be doing what we already do to make, because what happens when we take away a bad habit, we need to replace it with a new one. What are you going to do if you're not looking at your phone? Replace it with a new habit. What could you be doing instead of looking at your phone?
And I love that question. I want everyone to kind of pause. Like if you're like driving or walking or wherever you're listening to this, is just kind of like think, even say out loud to yourself if you have an answer. But when you're not looking at technology or your phone or a screen, what will you be doing? What do you want to do? What are you going to do instead? You don't just have to sit there in silence with your own thoughts. That's really terrifying to a lot of people. You can get there later. Like I know for me, there's been points where I'm really stressed out. The idea of like meditating is horrifying to me. So just do something else, but just make it not looking at a screen. Read a book. I love, Chido, you mentioned a lot of like stretching, exercise. I have like little 2-minute dance parties that I time for myself. I did one this morning, helps me get more steps in on my Fitbit. And like listening to podcasts, like, here we are, things like that. Yeah.
I love that, because what we want to do, we're really seeking, and I think people who are online business owners, if you're someone who's working remotely now, is to create these positive digital boundaries and this digital culture that's positive, right? We're not anti-tech. Tech is not going away. It is only going to exacerbate as we move forward. But how do we make it be our superpower instead of something that's just diminishing and attacking our mental health, our confidence, like we need to mindfully think about the role tech plays in our lives as humans and how we want it to play moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's like the thesis of this entire conversation. So one thing I realized I didn't ask, which I'm so curious about now, is how did you get into this space? Like what drew you to want to get the digital wellness certification and like dive in with that?
Yeah. Well, I remember when COVID happened and everyone's working from home, and I was like, I work from home anyway. I'm an online business owner. Like we work from home. This is not really going to affect me. Other people were like feeling the perils of working from home. And it was different because we couldn't go out. We couldn't connect. I think I diminished like how hard it was going to be. And I just crashed, like severe anxiety. I was not happy showing up. And as we had to show up, everyone's like, if you need to market your business, you need to show up. We had those marketers telling us to show up. This is great. Your audience needs you. But I just wasn't there. And I felt horrible. I felt like a failure because I just didn't have it in me. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm the worst marketer ever because I don't feel like showing up. And when I learned about digital wellness and the instant certificate, I was like, oh, wow, there are things that I can do to empower myself. And it's not this thing about showing up. It's bigger than that. It's how well I want to feel about my phone, about social media. I don't want to have these negative feelings around something that's my bread and butter that provides for me.
Yeah. What a cognitive dissonance, right? When we feel guilty about the thing that we do to make a living. That's problematic. We don't want that.
And I was shaming myself for that. I was like, wow, how many people are probably feeling like they're not meant to serve because they just don't feel in control of their tech? And how are companies, I'm thinking all these people who are now, remote work is growing. How many people are now working remotely and are going to be failing from doing what they're called to do because they don't know that there's a different hat, there's a different way of being now that we work from home. And I think, there's been conversation of work-life balance for online business owners, that everyone has done a work-life balance blog or article, but I think we forget there is none of that because we're on tech. And that was the thing when I realized, online business people have been trying to find work-life balance that doesn't exist because we've never gone to the crux of our digital habits and our boundaries. That's why we've struggled with this topic for years.
Quotable like that. I'm like, pull that out, that line right there. That's the promo for this episode. Yeah.
We've been searching for this magic bullet for work-life balance, but we had been doing it via tech. It's a different animal.
Yeah.
It's a different animal. And I got it. When I did it, I was like, people who work online, people who have online, we need to know this, because a lot of us are feeling so bad about our business because we don't have these boundaries. We don't have these positive relationships.
It was like a losing game. There was no answer before. And like what that made me think of in my situation, because I love what you said about how you were working at home before. So it really isn't any different. And I keep making that joke, like nothing changed because I've been working from home for 10 years, but you're right. It did change. And one big thing for me was my husband started working from home, and I realized that like, I love having him around because I don't feel like we saw each other enough before, and his commute is really long, and like he would be so tired at the end of the day. So I think that's been generally like a really good thing for us. But what's been interesting is because he's not used to working from home, he doesn't have those habits and routines for that. And I realized that for me, him coming home at the end of the day was like this anchoring for me to wind up my work. And then that was gone. And then he was working really late at night. And then I was like, oh my God, my trigger to end my day is gone. So like we need to have so much self-compassion for these shifts. Okay, we're well into this now. We're like almost a year into this, but like all these pretty massive shifts that we've had to there's been so many like that we just forget about a lot of them, right? That we've had to acclimate to that have a very real impact on our mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're someone working with a team or at home, I think this is the conversation I'd love people working with remote teams and virtual people is like really creating that communication charter of like, how are we working online? And that's something I learned. And I realized I was doing that because when a client signed up to work with me, I would send them this how I work document. And I used to say, I don't communicate on weekends. I don't communicate. So I was happy I was putting those boundaries, but not a lot of people know that. So people who have remote teams, there's three things conversations you should be having. One is, how do we want to work online? How do we want to work on Slack? How do we want to work on email? That should be what our values, right? And then second thing, what are our digital boundaries? What is appropriate? If you have a team member that's a mom, you got to be like, hey, she should be in a space where she can say, I can't be available at this time. Hopefully your work is conducive to that kind of conversation, of course. But even just saying what is comfortable for you, how can you show up and not be stressed about work because you're virtually? Maybe she's like, I don't want to do emails in the morning. I'm available after.
And respect those boundaries from your team members. Yeah.
Because they'll be happy to work with you. They're going to show up so much differently when they know you understand they're not going to answer emails until afternoon, and you guys can work around that. Or if it's urgent, she knows I will respond accordingly.
I love
And
that.
third is the method of communication, of what's important and urgent, what's important, what's not urgent. So when we have these boundaries, people can show up online a little differently in Teams or virtually. And those are bigger conversations that I don't think anyone knows happening in the business setting, because you just came into work, clocked in, clock out.
Yeah.
And I think now there's new conversations of workplace culture that we need to have about what are our digital boundaries?
Okay,
what does it look like to thrive?
I'm like, this is like opening up a whole can of worms for me that you just said that, because literally yesterday, so we're recording this the first like work week of 2021. And yesterday we had our first team meeting of the year. And what I realized over the last few months was that, you know, I don't want to like go on this tangent about me, but I'm just going to try to keep it like concise. As an individual, I'm very rebellious. I don't like being told what to do. I've never really had a regular, quote unquote, regular job. And so me as a leader, I really try not to micromanage people. I don't like telling people what to do. I like telling them what I need and then letting them decide how they're going to do it. So I'll be like, okay, when do you want to get that done by? Like, I try to give them a lot of autonomy. But what I've realized is that I have to do more than that, because, and this is what I want to say to you entrepreneurs out there, the people you bring onto your team have a lot of past conditioning in other work experiences with bosses telling them exactly when to do, not trusting them, micromanaging. It's like all about how much time you're sitting in your butt at your desk. It's not about like how, like what you're actually getting done or results or anything like that. And so what I realized is I needed to have, and I did have a very frank conversation with my team about, you do not need to be in Slack all day. In fact, like, don't be in Slack all day. All I want you to do is like, maybe twice a day, like go through the messages and respond, but like really only once a day, you have to do that. But what I realized was I never told them to be in Slack all day, but that they would like post messages being like, hey, I'm stepping out for an hour. And I'm like, why are you don't have to tell me that. Like, especially if you're a contractor, like I have no control over your schedule. It's like illegal for me to like, you know what I mean? And so I told them, I was like, guys, you don't have to let us know what you're doing today. Like, we don't have that always on culture, but even if you don't, you have to be very explicit about that with your team members, because they've probably worked for people who did have that mentality, because that's the norm. One thing I talked to them about was taking breaks. I'm obsessed with taking breaks, going for walks, as I've already like gone on and on about. And I told them yesterday, I said, I want everyone to commit to like how you're going to take healthy breaks. Like, I need to get them to stop working. People want to do a good job. You have to get them to take breaks. I told them, I expect you to take mental health days this year. If you're not taking mental health days or personal days, then I'm concerned. Like, then I'm worried you're about to burn out or something's going to happen because you're trying to like go, go, go. Like you said, you're not a computer. And until we all acknowledge we are not computers, we're going to continue to have this problem. Okay. That's the end of my rant.
No, that's amazing points, because the average person picks up their phone 58 times. We're spending 3 hours on our phone. That's on our phones. That's not even on the computer. What do we think we are reshaping our cognizant brain to rethink our lifestyle, our body? How's that affecting everything? Like, what we're doing now was not what we're doing 10 years ago, 2 years ago, even.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking about, you and I had the conversation that Microsoft CEO said that we went 2 years and 2 months. So anyone who's feeling hard right now or struggling, give yourself grace. This is unprecedented. The last time we had anything like this was when the .com era came. Like, that was the last time something revolutionary happened. .com era has been there since the 90s. This is the next era. We are witnessing a transition right now, today. And everything as we've known it is going out the window, and we're relearning everything.
Oh, I think that is like the perfect thing for us to like wrap up on. Chido, I know that everyone listening is going to want to come find you. So can you tell us a little bit about like where people can find you, share any kind of like freebie or anything that you want to share with people, social media, what have you? And we'll put it all in the show notes too, guys. So you can find that on the website and also on like wherever you're listening to the podcast, we'll have all of her information.
Great. You can find me on all the social medias at Chido_Samantha. And my website is chidosamantha.com. And I'm going to be plugging in all my digital wellness goodies and all this stuff on chidosamantha.com/digital wellness. I'm going to have a bunch of resources of what I've been learning because I'm in the embodiment stage, right? I went through the knowledge. Embodiment is where it's hardest because I got to change everything I've learned. So I would like to think I'm an expert because I know what to do. I'm doing the doing. And when I get there, I'll let you know.
But that's the kind of person I want to learn from, is not some like expert on a mountaintop telling me how to be perfect, but someone who's like in it and doing it. And so, first of all, like, thank you so much for this conversation and for being our very first guest. Because you're like, just so you guys know, behind the scenes is like me figuring out like, how do we do guests? Like, how do we organize this? And like, we've been talking about this for months. I'm so glad we did this. I think it's going to be so helpful for our listeners. Guys, please share this episode, tag both Chido and myself on Instagram, but like do it intentionally and plan your time and then like, don't get obsessive about it. Because we want to, reshare your stories and all of that. I want everyone who possibly can to hear this message that you have. So make sure to go follow her and get those resources as she's creating them. Because what I love, I think you're in this perfect space of like, I love the 4 quadrants of learning of like unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, unconscious competence. I feel like you're really in that conscious competence right now, which is, I think, an awesome time to learn from somebody because they remember what it was like to not know the thing, which makes them better teachers in a lot of ways. So I'm so eager to have everybody go learn from you. Thank you again so much. This was awesome. For everybody listening, I will chat with you in next week's episode. And I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. Bye, Chido.
Bye.
Yay. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you love today's content and are ready to finally start making a full-time income from your business this year, make sure to get on the wait list for my program, Yay for Clients, over at yayforclients.com, and you'll be notified the next time enrollment is open. Or if you're already booked with clients and you want to learn how you can turn your signature service into a signature program and add 100K of revenue to your bottom line, come apply to my group coaching program, Yay for 100K, over at CourtneyShaw.com/apply. Thanks again and have an awesome day.